Let's talk.
John Brown.
The Atlas of Deadly Plants, Botanical Tales of the World's Most Intoxicating, Poisonous and Dangerous Specimens, is the book that you've been waiting for just in time for Christmas. And I'm delighted to say that the author of it, probably hunching over some concoction she's got especially made for me, is Jane Perrone. Jane, good morning to you.
Good morning. Yeah, I mean, you can buy this for your loved ones or your hated ones. I mean, it's up to you. There is a warning in the front of the book saying that all of the information is for information purposes only. So don't try any of this at home.
Yes, indeed. The great Terry Pratchett once famously said, all fungi are edible, but some fungi are only edible once. Because,
there's a few phrases like that. There's also there are bold mushroom hunters and old mushroom hunters, but no old bold mushroom hunters. So there you go. There's your warning.
So your introduction to this sort of comes because you too, I believe, had an interesting experience. Was it elderberries you thought, or some sort of berry that had tell me about it.
Well, I think we've all probably been there in some form or other. As a small child, I mean, this was the late 70s, early 80s. So, parenting was different back then. I wandered off as a young child and ate some elderberries and was told by a passing resident that it was fine, that they were just elderberries, when I burst into tears thinking I killed myself. But I mean, raw elderberries will make you nauseous because of the contents, which are destroyed by cooking. So I didn't know that at the time. I was fine, but it does teach us a few lessons about dealing with plants and fungi. And the main two lessons are know what 100%, or in Simon Cowell style, 1,000% what you're actually dealing with. And secondly, as Paracelsus said, the poison is the dose. So depends how much of this stuff that you're taking, whether it in some cases is a medicine or a poison.
So what are we looking at here? Are we looking at a history where it fits into with the UK society and history and medicinal, or is it because of in an age where people are saying, let's go raw food, I want to run through fields of tulips in slow motion with a white dress, and that's just me, we should be getting back to nature and nature's bounty, and the next thing you know, you're in A&E having tubes stuck in you?
Well, we've always used plants in interesting ways, and probably today's society, we're using them a lot less, and we're interacting with plants in the wild a lot less than we did in the past. Hence, plant poisonings are actually, relatively speaking, in the minority when it comes to other kinds of poisonings. You're much more likely to be poisoned by carbon monoxide in your home than you are by a plant. However, we do need to be careful because there are some plants out there which are common garden and wild plants in the UK and elsewhere that are extremely poisonous. There are 2 plants in the book that are classed under the UN convention as biological weapons. So, it's no joke. One has to know these things in order to stay safe. And just the message is, if you don't really know what something is, even if you think it's a medicine, then, seek advice from an expert.
Yeah. Are we talking belladonna here? Is that what?
Yeah, Deadly Nightshade is in the book, and it's a very, very fascinating plant. The devil's cherries, as it used to be called. It used to be thought that this was the plant that if you interacted with this plant, you'd be communing with the devil. And it's a plant that has a long history of association with witchcraft. It's a really fascinating one, but was also used. The belladonna bit comes from the fact that women in Italy many moons ago used to drop the juice of the berries in their eyes to expand their pupils and make them look even more beautiful. Again, don't try it at home. But it's a really, really fascinating plant. There's several in the book that are associated with witchcraft. Also things like black henbane, which has these incredible, I think the flowers were described as corpse-coloured veiny flowers. And then we've got mandrake, which we might know from the Harry Potter world as being this fascinating plant that's associated with witchcraft. So, yeah, there's some really interesting tales details in the book.
I mean, when you talk about things like Mandrake, and listen, I in the 80s, I was frolicking around doing, I don't know, Dungeons and Dragons, and that came up all the time. Mandrake really exciting. But does the countryside still exist that a lot of these plants can, because obviously because of intensive farming, destruction of woodlands, it's a different environment to what it would have been obviously in the 13th century or the 15th century, etc. So a lot of these would be more challenging to find than it would have been if you were frolicking in the hedgerows in your medieval garb.
It's a mixed picture. So some of these plants are what we call ruderal plants, and that just means ones that grow in places which have been disturbed by human activity. So waste dumps, the side of the road, places where humans have been but are currently not inhabiting. And some of these plants have been grown in the past in garden settings as medicinal plants. So it really varies depending on what you're talking about. Mandrake is native to parts of Europe. It's not native to the UK. And so clever scammers in medieval times actually used another poisonous plant called white bryony, which had a similarly knobbly and large root, and basically scammed people into thinking they were buying mandrake when they were actually buying white bryony. So, today we might be scammed over, I don't know, somebody might be trying to take money out of our bank account, but back then they were trying to sell you a root that looked like a person.
So how... I mean, I was always sort of, what is it, devil's nightcap, if it's bright red, don't touch it was the basic rule, is it?
I mean, well, if only it were that simple, because there are just so many different plants that are poisonous in different degrees in the Solanaceae family, for example. So that includes our potatoes, our tomatoes, our chilies, our peppers, all lovely things we enjoy eating.
Solanaceae? Is that
Solanaceae, yeah, the Solanaceae family.
Right, okay.
That's all of those lovely things we love to eat, but also some of the quite deadly things in our in the book are also members of this same family. So we have to be a little bit educated. And there's plants with red berries that we can eat and plants with red berries that we definitely don't want to eat. So the more you can educate yourself and learn about these plants and start to open your eyes to what's around you, hopefully the more enjoyment you get from learning about them, but you also keep yourself safe.
So when you're compiling this, is this something that you... I'm going to phrase this very, very delicately, Jane. Is this something that you have prior knowledge in? I'm just looking behind you to see if there's anything bubbling away or I should be more worried about.
No cauldrons present.
Yeah.
I am a garden writer. I've been doing this for many years. I've written a book about houseplants where I went into the histories of houseplants called Legends of the Leaf. So I'm used to this kind of research. I was familiar with a lot of these plants before I started, but I did dive into a lot of academic papers and books to write this book and drawing out all these incredible stories, which are really, really fun, alongside the illustrations, which I have to mention, they're so gothic and dark. If you need a tattooed inspiration, they might serve a good purpose because they're really, really cool, done by an illustrator called Alice Smith.
So did you work with her and say, well, this one looks really, this should be in Bram Stoker's allotment, that sort of thing?
Yeah, exactly. And her style is very gothic, and so it really suited the style of the book. And there are botanical illustrations in there as well, historic photographs and illustrations of plants, but there are also these wonderful illustrations which really bring the subject to life and give you a real sense of the plant's kind of aura, if I can put it that way.
Here's the thing, though, because you mentioned witchcraft, and let's not go full Stevie Nicks on this one, because one of the things is, we can go, okay, and people think, cauldrons a whole bit. If you think of the Middle Ages, and especially like places like Italy, poisoning is the woman's thing. I mean, there were bakeries in Florence that suddenly you would go to if you hadn't, because obviously in the Middle Ages, if you're a normal woman and you're not, La Comtesse or whatever, you've got no agency. And so if you've got an abusive husband, one of the only ways to get out of that is to make him extremely unwell, if not sort of to shuffle off to meet his proverbial maker. So it's not people cackling on full moons, is it? I mean, there's all sorts of uses to this.
Well, I mean, what witchcraft, the story of witchcraft in Europe has obviously been told throughout the ages by men who had a particular agenda here. So all of these very lurid stories about witches are lurid and massively exaggerated. Nobody's flying off on a broomstick to meet the devil in the night. We know that. However, as you say, there is a kind of a grain of truth in that women in the household were the people who had control, who had understanding and control of herbal plants, which were used both in cooking and in remedies that were used for all kinds of treatments. And there was something called dwale, which is like a sort of medieval anesthetic, which was a combination of different plants, like some of the ones I've mentioned, black henbane, and is included in that. And this would be given to people who maybe they were coming back from a battle and they were really badly injured, would be given to those people as like a sleeping drug, which obviously, they may not wake up from their injuries, right, or they may not. Yeah, exactly. So these women had a great deal of knowledge and used plants in a very practical way. So obviously that was their agency. And yes, of course, I'm sure there were examples of plants being used to harm people if you had that knowledge in the past. And it still happens today, but it's a lot easier to be detected now. Most of these plant poisons are figured out because there are certain symptoms that come to light and we can test extensively. Of course, none of that existed back then. So yes, I'm sure there were some dastardly deeds going on sorry, that's my doorbell going off.
Fine, that's all right. That's live radio. I was just going to say, presumably as well.
The one thing I forgot to turn off.
Yes, yeah, like the doorbell. The other thing is the fact that presumably they're using these plants. As I said, it's the dosage. So if you want to feel a little bit better, a little bit merrier, I'm not saying you should be off smoking. I'm not going to play White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane. But presumably, we'd now to treat what we now call anxiety, which obviously in the Middle Ages is probably being trampled down by a French horseman. But you know what I'm saying here? They're in the right dosage. And we could go full shamanism if you want, but they have it's against the doses. It's all about the dose, as the saying goes.
Yeah, exactly. The trouble with a lot of these plants is they have a very small dosage window. So what that means is it's very easy to overdose. So some of these plants that were used as for medicinal purposes in the past now aren't used because basically it's very easy to go over the top and do yourself harm. So that's obviously if you've got if the window is larger, then it means you're less likely to poison yourself. So, of course, medicine's been working on all these plants and lots of medicines have been derived from a lot of these plants, but we're a lot more educated now about how to use them. And that's why, as I say, the advice is not to go out and pick these plants and try to cure whatever's wrong with you, because that may not be a wise strategy.
Well, I mean, if it all goes horribly wrong and you get the wrong mushroom or whatever, I mean, are we talking sort of Game of Thrones Joffrey type vomiting here? Are we talking apoplectic shock? Do you turn blue and your arms drop off?
The way that plant poisonings are portrayed in films and books and TV is very dramatic, isn't it? You literally, you take the deadly substance and you're dead within seconds, or it's very dramatic. It's very, very rare for it to be that quick in real life, unless, there are a few things that will kill you quite quickly, but most of the time it's a slow burn. And there's this awful thing called treacherous remission. And this happens in a lot of fungus poisoning.
That's a great name for a band, by the way, a metal band. Treacherous remission. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Absolutely. So treacherous remission, almost all plant poisonings start with gastrointestinal symptoms. So you think that you're sick because you ate a mushroom a week ago and now you're feeling ill. So you think to yourself, okay, I must have food poisoning or I've got a virus. And you don't go to the doctor and then you start feeling a little bit better. And that's treacherous remission. Unfortunately, that's the point at which the toxins are getting to work on your organs and really doing a lot of damage to you. So really that's something to be aware of. And this is the struggle for those in hospitals dealing with patients coming in with symptoms, which, to be honest, can be caused by a whole host of things. If somebody doesn't relate it back to that plant or fungus that they ate, it's very difficult for the doctor to then figure out what's going on. So keep a record of what, if you do go out foraging, keep a record of what you've eaten.
Because I remember, growing up in Staffordshire, in the Shire, I mean, nettles were a problem, but and that's how they're going to kill you unless you've, like my mate went in with in one of those sitting lawnmowers by mistake. He went bam, but there were always dock leaves. It was like rub the dock leaf on yourself and you'll recover. I mean, are there get well soon cures normally around the place, or if you do, yeah. I
mean, wherever there are these plants exist, there are plants that are used traditionally by people in those places to treat the problem. And funnily, talking about stinging nettles, there are two plants in this book which are related to the stinging nettle, but which are so much worse. There's one in New Zealand and one in Australia. The one in Australia is called gimpy gimpy, and it's like a giant stinging nettle. And if you go into that, if you walk into that, it won't kill you, but you'll be in so much pain that you want to be dead. It's a really horrendous...
And the only thing you can say is gimpy gimpy, basically, for a week after.
Yeah, exactly. And it's horrendous. But there are local treatments. Basically, this plant has these trichomes, these tiny hairs full of toxins that get injected into your arms or wherever you've been, into your flesh, and so local people would do things like covering themselves with mud and remove the trichomes. These days we use heavy tape or wax for beauty treatments to pull out the trichomes, but it's really a horrible experience, and lots of people describe it as one of the things that people describe the pain as being like, as having parts of your body trapped between blocks of wood that are being smashed together. So it sounds really unpleasant.
Australia, the gift that keeps on giving. So whatever you do, don't go behind the bushes in Australia, because you might get gimpy gimpy on your posterior. And
in fact, the toxins in this plant are very similar to toxins in some of the most poisonous creatures in Australia, like the cone snail. So it's all interesting how this sort of these very different creatures and plants have come up with the same solution.
What's your and anybody who knows my relationship history will laugh. What's your most beautiful but deadly one then that you think? Or beautiful and dangerous?
I mean, I really do love Deadly Nightshade, Atropa belladonna. It's got these incredible, like, lilac trumpet flowers and then these cool blackberries. I think it's I also love black henbane, though, which is very gothic. So, as I say, the corpse-coloured flowers. I haven't tried this yet, but apparently if you set the leaves alight, they sparkle. I just think it's a really cool plant. Those are two ones that I really love. But there's so many of them are beautiful and attractive, and you'd look at them and go, oh, that's a lovely plant, and have no idea of its potential to harm.
Unless we forget mistletoe, of course, is the one thing that killed the Norse god Balder, of course.
Well, you see, this is the thing. There are loads of plants that I haven't included in the book that could have been in there.
There's we come to Christmas,
there are many, and plants that people assume are just like nice, lovely things. I mean, yew is often collected and used for evergreen decoration, and of course, we have to be super careful with that plant because it's very, very poisonous, and that is not a plant you want to be messing with because it will kill you quite quickly. Unfortunately, people see birds eating the red berries on yew and think, oh, well, it must be okay. Not the case. So, yes, just because you see an animal eating a plant doesn't mean that we can eat it.
I will take that one. Not that I'm going to go and pick out anything in the Spanish firmament just yet. The book is called The Atlas of Deadly Plants, Botanical Tales of the most intoxicating, poisonous and dangerous specimens. It's beautifully illustrated by Alice Smith, and the book is written by Jane Perrone. Jane, if people want to find you online and say nice things to you so they don't get deadly nightshade through the post, what tell me you've got an all-seeing, all-dancing media presence.
Yes, you can find me at janeperrone.com, where you'll find my podcast On the Ledge, which is all about houseplants, but does have some deadly plants content recently. And that's also where you can find my other books and all that good stuff.
And you can also order, listeners, you can order it via our own virtual bookstore just in time for Christmas. The book is called The Atlas of Deadly Plants. It's by Jane Perrone. Jane, it's been an absolute eye-opener to speak to you today. Thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Thank you.